You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to ThunderQuack Reviewed. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and I'll introduce my guest co-host in a minute. But I just want to explain before we get into everything. You might be asking yourself, is this a spoiler cast? Traditionally, what we've done on the channel and with the podcast and everything is when we do these reviews after a movie comes out, we do a full spoiler cast and we let people know right at the beginning, hey, this is all spoilers. Go watch the movie first, or be spoiled. That's your choice. But the idea was always that we were doing a full 100% spoiler cast. But we're going to change that a little bit. So for those of you who follow us on Patreon and maybe listen to some of the other podcasts, you may have heard a little bit about the changes that are coming to the ThunderQuack Podcast Network over the next few months. And this is one of them. So we're sort of reconfiguring all of our Patreon tiers. But I wanted to keep this product more or less the same thing. But I wanted to try something a little bit different with it. So ThunderQuack Reviewed is actually one half of our new YouTube-based content. So we'll have ThunderQuack Reviewed, and then starting in January 2020, along with ThunderQuack Reviewed every month, we'll also have ThunderQuack Ranked. And ThunderQuack Ranked will be taking different franchises and ranking the entries in those franchises. So we're actually doing a preview of ThunderQuack Ranked over the next few weeks. We're going to do every week on the ThunderQuack podcast, which you can get at thunderquack.com starting next week, starting on May. Let's see, what's the Tuesday? That's the 21st? I think so. Yeah. So starting on the 21st, you'll be able to get the early access to that episode if you're on Patreon. And the coming Friday, which is the 24th, my birthday, you'll in that ThunderQuack podcast episode, we will have part 1 of 8/9 of our Star Wars ranked series. So the idea behind the ranked is like I said, we'll be going through a franchise, ranking every entry in that franchise. So Star Wars, Harry Potter, we'll eventually do the MCU, we'll do even the DCEU, all sorts of stuff, right? So all the kind of content that we normally do, but we'll be going back and sort of digging back into older movies as well. Because we do a lot of cool stuff with the spoiler cast. We really focused on new stuff, obviously, that was coming out as it was coming out. With Reviewed, I feel like with Spoilercast, there was a little bit of like, we got to get this out right away, because otherwise what's the point of it being a spoiler cast? With it being reviewed, there's a little bit more wiggle room in there. So if we get sort of hit with a barrage of movies all at once, like we do around this time of the year and around Christmas, that we can actually just kind of space that content out a little bit and figure that out. But this will be our first entry in it. We're going to talk about Detective Pikachu. You might have noticed from the thumbnail or the title of the episode. So this is going to be a conversation about Detective Pikachu. We will give our impressions and reviews up front, and then there will be a warning, and then we'll go into spoiler territory, and it'll be full spoilers. So no holds barred, like everything is on the table. So yeah, there's that part of it, and then the other part of it, like I said, we're changing our Patreon structure. You can head to patreon.com/thunderquack to check out all of the new Patreon tiers. They're up now on the website, so you can go see that. And if you are a $5 subscriber on Patreon, then you get this episode as an MP3, and so you don't have to hang out on YouTube to watch it / listen to it. That said, if you have been watching our YouTube content for a while, you know that generally it's not that exciting. We are a podcast network. We're not really doing a lot of like straight video content. But I previously it was just a thumbnail for the whole thing, just a static thumbnail. But you'll notice now in this video, the opening is animated, and there's a couple of little bits in the episode itself. So hopefully if you check us out on YouTube, you enjoy those little enhancements. But otherwise, if you want to listen to the MP3, you can get it through patreon.com/thunderquack at the $5 tier and above. And with that, you also get at $5 you get early access and the uncut version of the ThunderQuack podcast. So that means the full recording with Amanda and I talking about whatever nonsense we're talking about. And so that's exclusive content specifically for Patreon. If you don't want to subscribe at the $5 level, you can get early access every Tuesday to the ThunderQuack podcast. And if you don't want to pay anything at all, you can continue to check us out on YouTube. Of course, like, comment, subscribe, as they say in the YouTube verse. And you can get the ThunderQuack podcast every Friday on podcast services around the globe. So, without further ado, let's get into ThunderQuack reviewed Detective Pikachu. As I said, I am Michael Cohen, and with me I've got my special guest co-host, Aaron Golden.
Hello, I'm back.
Yeah, now we did the Hellboy one a little while ago.
Yeah.
About a month ago. That one was a little bit more of the NC-17 because that movie
was NC-17.
Yeah. But because it's Detective Pikachu, we're going to try and keep it on the PG bent so that to match the content of the movie. But let's get into it. Before we talk about the movie, what's your background? What's your history with the Pokemon franchise?
So interestingly, when Pokemon first took off, I didn't have one.
Okay.
I really started getting into Pokemon. A friend of mine who's a video game designer started playing the game and was just like, oh, it's just this really cute elemental-based RPG fight simulator. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I picked it up and then ended up playing... There's an unofficial role-playing game.
Like a pen and paper?
Yeah, seizure-inducing pocket cockfighting monsters.
Okay.
That I picked up that was a splat book for a game called Big Eyes Small Mouth.
Okay.
So I ran a couple of games in that. And then Brooke Burgess, of all people, asked me to do like a Pokemon-based game using angels and demons for some reason.
I remember that because I drew a piece of art for it.
Yep.
I remember when you were doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that became a thing.
Okay.
And then just periodically, like I've gone back and forth, and like I know the mythology and I know a bunch of the lore, and I've seen the movies, and have definitely rocked out singing the theme song in my car while driving because it's just a great song. But I was never like a massive fan. It was never my thing until Pokemon Go hit.
Yes.
And now I am a level 33 Pokemon trainer with a Team Mystic.
Okay.
And my wife and I go for Pokewalks where we conquer every Pokegym in our area, turn them all blue, and then rant about it on Instagram.
Nice.
Yes.
Cool. I mean, I was a hardcore Pokemaniac from day one. And I would even say like pre-day one. The second that any news came out about this game, I'm sure it would have been in like Nintendo Power or something like that. Me and my friend Bill, we instantly gravitated towards it. We were already big anime fans. Bill was huge into RPGs, like video game RPGs, and we both played pen and paper RPGs. We played Shadowrun. I played Shadowrun at the time. He was playing other games, but yeah, and this game came along, and I remember the Game Boy Color came out a little while after that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to say that Pokemon came out in like the spring, summer, and then the Game Boy Color came out in the winter. And I remember, like, I got Pokemon, I played it on my Game Boy, but then I traded in basically everything that I had to get the Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
And I got the Game Boy Color, and then eventually I got Link's Awakening Color.
Yeah.
Like the color version of that, and Harvest Moon GBC, which was the Game Boy Color
also
version.
fantastic.
Yeah. One of the best versions of the game. Yeah. And those were kind of the three games that I played on my Game Boy forever. And really didn't need anything else, because if you've got Pokemon, Harvest Moon, and Legend of Zelda,
you're covered.
What else could you possibly want?
But
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, I had Pokemon Red, and I had the player's guide, like the official Nintendo player's guide for it, which had all 151 Pokemon in it.
Who was your starter?
Charmander, of course. And my team, my Elite Four team, it was Arcanine. Arcanine is my numero uno Pokemon. Mm-hmm. He's my soul brother in the Pokemon sense. Charizard, Jolteon, mm-hmm. Aerodactyl, who am I forgetting? That's four of them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I have it written down, and I have this written down for a reason, because I always end up forgetting at least one or two. Yeah. But yeah, like, unable to install notes. Okay, I don't have access to... There we go. Now it's installing on my phone. That was a weird glitch. Who did I say? Arcanine, mm-hmm. Charizard, yep. Jolteon, mm-hmm. Aerodactyl. Yep. I can see them in my head, and I can't think of names right now. Classic Pokemon team. Here we go. Zapdos and Sandslash. That's right. So I really heavy on the fire, really heavy on the electric, mm-hmm. And then for some reason Sandslash and Aerodactyl, which I guess, like, you've got ground and then rock.
You want a balance, right?
Yeah,
because you want to make sure that you can handle whatever comes your way.
Yeah. So that's like my classic team, and I'm playing Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu right now, and I've collected most of this team. I have Arcanine, I have Charizard. I have the Alolan version of Sandslash. I have Aerodactyl. And then instead of Jolteon, I've got Pikachu. Because mm-hmm. you kind of have to. You don't have to. I think you can remove him from your party. But he's still there. So it's like... And he is the best in the game. Mm-hmm. Like, he's awesome. He has all these great moves. So I use Pikachu instead of Jolteon. And I'm not at the point where I can go get Zapdos yet. Or actually, I probably could, because I'm right before the Elite Four. But I don't know if I will. I might replace Zapdos with somebody else. I think right now I've got, in place of Zapdos, I have Kabutops. But, yeah. So I'm, like, I was hardcore. Yeah. And I'm still a pretty hardcore Pokemon fan. And I watch the cartoon every day after school. And then the second game came out, and I don't know why, I just never picked up the second game. Huh. Which is so odd. Like, when I look back at it, I think it was probably just a money thing. It's probably purely financial. Mm-hmm. But in any case, I was still watching the cartoon. I was still watching the movies, all that stuff. I was still into Pokemon. I think at that point, like, I was more focused on N64 than I was on the Game Boy.
So, of course, that begs the question.
Yeah.
Did you play Pokemon Snap?
Yes.
Because that was amazing.
Yes. Pokemon Snap was, like, a moment. Like, because Pokemon Snap, for those who don't know, was a game on the Nintendo 64 where instead of catching Pokemon and battling Pokemon, you went to a special island and you go on a Pokemon safari with your camera, and just take pictures of Pokemon in their
the
quote
wild.
unquote natural habitats.
Yeah, just being Pokemon. It was amazing.
Yeah, and you could take your game cart and you could take all your pictures into the Blockbuster Video.
Yep.
And this is back, first of all, when it was Blockbuster Video, not Blockbuster, and when Blockbuster was still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But and they'd have this kiosk, and you'd put your Nintendo 64 game save cartridge, right, like your memory card, into this thing with the Pokemon Snap game cartridge as well. I think. Yeah, I think so. You had to have both of them or whatever. You put them in, and then you could print out the pictures that you took in Pokemon Snap on sticker backed.
Yep.
They
had a thing,
little photo
like
things.
an add-on for one of the Game Boys where you could do the same thing as well.
Yeah.
And that was just really cool.
Yeah, the Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and man, it was such a moment. Pokemon was such a big deal at the time, and I can remember everybody at the time that wasn't into it, especially adults, going like, "It's a fad.
Yep.
It's a thing, and it'll be gone, just like Pogs, just like Power Rangers, just like blah blah blah." And it's like, okay, Pogs, everybody was right. Total fad, disappeared, never happened again. I shouldn't say never happened again. Turned into other things.
Yeah.
But Power Rangers, still kicking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those things that like people were totally wrong.
Yeah.
But Pokemon, bigger than ever.
Well, here's the thing that kind of captures what those things are and why they last is they've got a narrative.
Yeah.
They have a mythology.
Yeah.
And it's interesting watching like those particular three properties, figuring out why they last and why they didn't.
Yeah.
Pogs had nothing.
Yeah.
There was no support for it. It was just this one-off thing.
Well, it relied on licensing in order to be cool, right? Yeah.
Power Rangers was its own unique thing that also had like a deep and detailed mythology to it, which is weird because, Power Rangers, you don't expect it to, but it really does.
Yeah.
But it's old media in that it's passive.
Yeah.
You consume it. Pokemon invited you into their world.
Yeah.
It was an active participation that went as deep as you wanted it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the first commercials for the Pokemon game when it came out? It was just like people walking around in a crowd, and it would be like kids in the crowd, and like light would shine down on them, and it would be like, "You can be one of us," and it was just like, this is never going to go away. This is going to be amazing.
It's so perfectly crafted, right? Because it's aimed at a young audience, and the main character, Red, who it's an RPG, so you can change his name, and everybody did.
Mm-hmm. And Rival.
Yeah, and the Rival, you can name the Rival as well. So like that, like you did literally put yourself into the game. You got to choose your party. You got to catch the Pokemon that you wanted. And then I think the big thing about Pokemon that helps it stand apart from anything else was the connectivity of it. Mm-hmm. And that was really, like, the Game Boy had always had the link cable. Yep. Like, from day one, it had the link cable. So that you could play 2-player Tetris, you could play
the
Mario.
Very first deathmatch, like, FPS shooter was on Game Boy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Death Ball.
Okay.
Where it was, you would play either a sphere, a cylinder, a triangle, or a cube.
Yeah. And
just had the big smiley face, and you would run around through a maze trying to shoot your opponents.
Yeah, yeah.
But nobody used that link cable until
Pokemon. Yeah. And it wasn't... I think that the genius thing about Pokemon at the time was that it wasn't just about battling.
It was trading.
And that's what... We didn't battle very often, because if you had level 100 Pokemon, everybody just had level 100 Pokemon. It's like... And then it just became a rock, paper, scissors. There was no point. Mm-hmm. But the trading and the genius of 2 cartridges, red and blue, or in Japan, red and green, and exclusive Pokemon on each cartridge, just slightly different experiences. They first of all, the allegiance was there. It's like, well, I'm red all the way. Yeah. Or if you were into blue, you're like, well, no, blue, but Blastoise is so cool, right? Yeah. and really like looking at the different games and what the roster of Pokemon, what the exclusives were on each was the thing that determined which one you would get. So my purchasing decision for a Pokemon game always has to do with which one has Growlithe. Because if Growlithe is available to catch in the game, I need to know, is he in both or is he only in one or the other? Right? And at the time, I just made the choice because Charizard I thought was cooler. A dragon was cooler than a big turtle. Yeah. But then as I played the game and Growlithe / Arcanine became my favorite Pokemon, like that motivates me to which one I get. That's why I had said to Crystal and Car, I was like, which Pokemon Let's Go should I get? Should I get Eevee or should I get Pikachu? Crystal really likes Eevee, so she was like, you should get Eevee. And then the game was like about to come out, and I was like, what are you doing? You didn't even check. And I went on, and I checked, and lo and behold, like they are essentially red and blue. Like the roster is Pikachu is red and Eevee is blue. And I looked, and it's like there's no Growlithe in the Eevee version, so I canceled my pre-order, which I had 20% off on that pre-order. Like I had it at a discount, and I paid full price for the game. Yeah. Just so that I could catch Growlithe on my own, because I don't want to have to trade for Growlithe.
You form emotional connections to the things, and you want the things. Yeah. I feel the same way about Umbreon.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is going to be completely silly, but Zigzagoon.
Yeah, yeah.
Zigzagoon is my favorite Pokemon.
Okay.
I love that thing. I think
it's a great
adorable.
Pokemon.
It is completely low power.
Yeah.
It will never win me a battle.
No.
But
it's just a normal type Pokemon, right? It doesn't have. There's nothing special.
There's like a level cap where they do not become very powerful at all. Like even their evolved form, and I don't like the evolved form.
No.
So I just got this one Zigzagoon.
Nice. I like that. I always like the idea of the partner Pokemon, and this is where we can get into the movie. Because that's really, I think, where the movie shines the brightest, is in this idea of the connection between people and Pokemon. Because as a lifelong Pokemon fan, I mean, I started playing this game when I was like 12. Like you say, emotional bonds are formed with these digital characters. And when I catch my Growlithe in whatever game, whatever iteration of Pokemon I'm playing, I mean, X and Y were rough because it was not, you couldn't just catch a Growlithe in that game. So you couldn't get an Arcanine by normal means. You had to, the only way to get Growlithe in game was to beat the game. And then there were there were these end game areas that you could go and basically farm different types of Pokemon. Well, I didn't want to beat the Elite Four without Arcanine. I can't do it. And like it's just, there's something in that relationship, that bond with that character, that specific Pokemon, that I was like, no, I have to go on. Thankfully now with the newer games, you can go online and you can trade with people all over the world. Yeah. So I had to go on, and I traded with people, but I wanted my own Growlithe. I didn't want a traded Growlithe, right? I wanted to train it from level 1 or from a low level at least, and choose when to evolve it so that it could have the best moves and blah blah blah, all that stuff. So I got 2 Growlithe, a male and a female, and then later in the games you can breed Pokemon. And I did that, and then you get an egg, and then you have to walk around with the egg until the egg hatches. So I had beaten all the gyms. I had done everything there was to do in this game, save for beating the Elite Four. And then there's tons of end game content after you beat the Elite Four. And I just basically farmed steps, not even battles. Like I wasn't even battling. I was literally just walking my character around the world until the egg hatched. And then I had my own Growlithe that didn't have the little thing in the Pokedex, or like in its character stats that said original trainer somebody else. Yeah. I was like, no, original trainer Arkwolf. Yeah. Like that's original trainer. Important. Yeah. Actually, Micah is the name that I use in RPGs. Yeah. So like that's how important that relationship is to me with that specific Pokemon, and they nailed that aspect of it in the movie. It's in the games you have 6 Pokemon in your party, right? Yeah. There was none of that conversation in this. There was a little bit of a hint at the beginning of the movie that like professional trainers have multiple Pokemon.
Yeah.
But it was much more clear that your partner Pokemon is like Ash and Pikachu. Mm-hmm. It's like there is a Pokemon that is not just...
Well,
you don't just battle that Pokemon. They are your best friend. Mm-hmm. They are a part of... like, they're an extension of you.
That was the premise of the city that they were in, right?
Yeah, Rhyme City. Yeah.
Nobody uses Pokeballs. It's... The Pokemon have integrated into human civilization. Which I thought was really interesting, and they did some... really fascinating things with it.
Yeah.
Just as far as like Pokemon in the background, like it was amazing.
Also, the fact that the movie, that Detective Pikachu, is not its own reality. It is in fact 20 years after the events
of the first
Pokemon movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, which is phenomenal. And like that's not really spoilers because it's in the first 5 minutes of the movie, right? And Mewtwo was in the trailers, but like there's a little bit like right at the beginning that they tell you like 20 years ago X happened, right? So
you do not need to see the first Pokemon movie to enjoy this movie, but
not at all. But if you're
going to see this movie, you've probably seen it.
I would hope so, right?
Like,
So yeah, I mean, like, I think I had a bit of a rough experience with the movie. I'll just say that.
Okay.
We went to a 5:00 showing. Kara is right in that zone. She's almost 3. She'll be 3 in August, right? So, she sometimes needs naps and other times doesn't. Mm-hmm. But regardless, like if she doesn't nap, that like dinner time is a little bit of a rough time of day. And she's pretty good. I mean, she's a well-behaved kid, but and she's got a good temperament, but she had a really hard time sitting still for the movie. Mm-hmm. So that made it difficult. She wanted to talk, she wanted to move around. That was difficult. And then so I'm concerned about that because in the movie theater, I don't want her to be disrupting other people's movie-going experience. So I'm self-conscious about that. I'm also trying to enjoy the movie, so I'm a little bit annoyed with her. But apparently, the parents of the 4 children sitting directly behind me didn't have any of that sort of mentality. Really didn't care what their kids were doing. So the 2 boys, like just behind me to my left, are just talking throughout the whole movie. And the little girl directly behind me is just kicking my seat the whole time. So I came out of the movie a little bit disappointed. Like I was a little bit like, I don't know if I liked the movie. Mm-hmm. Which, if you've been listening to ThunderQuack and to the other podcasts for a while, you know that like this is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Like when they announced this, I was like, well, let's see what they do with Detective Pikachu, which is a property that already exists. Mm-hmm. It's a basically a mystery novel, interactive novel on the 3DS.
Yeah,
in Japan. Actually, it got localized here, didn't it?
Yeah, and they've got artwork from it in the credits of the movie.
Yeah.
Which not a spoiler because it doesn't matter.
No,
it's just cute.
Yeah. So I was super hyped up on this movie. I think I checked out a few too many of the trailers and promos and stuff like that because a lot of the jokes were kind of ruined for me by virtue of having seen them already. So that compounded with the bad theater experience that I had, I left the movie theater a little bit bummed out and a little bit disappointed that it didn't live up to my own level of hype. But then I listened to the kind of funny in review of Detective Pikachu, and I listened to those guys talk about it, and they talked about a bunch of stuff that I didn't catch when I was watching it because obviously I wasn't able to give it my full attention. Mm-hmm. And listening to them talk about it and smiling at the different things that they were mentioning that I was remembering, and then hearing the other parts of it that was like, I did not catch that. I didn't notice that. In retrospect, I love this movie.
Yeah.
I do actually think that they nailed it. Like, they did it. Mm-hmm. It's film noir, and it's paced like a film noir.
Yep.
But it's also Pokemon, and it's a kid's movie, so there's action in it.
Yeah.
Now, the one action sequence, we'll talk about that when we get into the spoiler stuff, was left a little bit to be desired and was completely unnecessary. You just cut it out of the movie. It's in there for one reason, but it wasn't a good reason. They could have done it a different way.
I think I know the scene you're talking about.
But other than that, I don't really have any other complaints. I think that it was a mystery that was interesting enough for adults, but easy enough to follow for kids. Mm-hmm. And that's a really difficult line to follow. The one mistake that I think they made with this movie is twofold. Mewtwo was in the trailer. Mm-hmm. Mewtwo is at the very beginning of the movie. Yep. In the first 5 minutes of the movie.
So
those two things ruin the mystery for me, because once you know that Mewtwo is involved,
anything is possible.
The mystery, it's like, you're like, well, it's probably one of these three things, and lo and behold, I was right. Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's a couple of things on that count. Because Bree and I went and saw A Late Show.
Yeah.
So there was nobody
in that theater.
Yeah. We had another like Hellboy experience where it was very much, we've almost got a private screening of this, and this is great.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. So we also saw it in 3D.
Yeah.
But we had the experience of nobody actually gave us the 3D glasses, so there was like a panicked run outside to find them. Thank you, Brie, for doing that, because my toe is still broken and I cannot run. But I think the marketing really failed this movie. Mm-hmm. In that I don't know who this movie was supposed to be for.
Yeah.
From the marketing, but having seen it, I know exactly who this movie is for. And it's incredibly well... It's a movie that is for people like you who grew up with it and like want to see Pokemon live action.
Yeah.
Because that's what this movie was, and it was brilliant.
Oh my god. They nailed the look.
Everything has weight.
Yeah.
All of the Pokemon running around feel like they exist within that world, and that's a remarkable achievement.
Yeah.
Because there is not a frame in this movie that is not crawling with Pokemon.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. But the marketing leads you to believe that this is going to be like sort of a sarcastic noir thing, and it really isn't. It's still draws a lot from noir, but it's very much a Pokemon movie.
Yeah.
And it's not a Pokemon movie for adults. It's a Pokemon movie. Which is to say that it's for pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
The trailers led me to believe that it was going to be like not like a hard R, but maybe like an adult accompaniment kind of thing.
They definitely leaned into the Ryan Reynolds aspect, the Deadpool part of it. Like they definitely used those elements, those marketable elements, to draw people into the theater. Yeah. That said, all of my adult friends who've seen this movie enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
So even though the marketing was misleading,
it's one of those
things. Makes it out to be a comedy, which it's not a comedy strictly speaking. It's just a family film. Yeah. So inherently it is infused with a lot of comedic elements, but it is not strictly speaking a comedic film.
It feels,
it's very dramatic at times, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Like very dramatic.
There are some parts that are actually very poignant and very heartfelt.
Which is where it loses points on the noir scale as well.
Yeah.
Because noir is heightened, but it is... there's often a melodramatic character or two in noir, but noir is usually a very objective, emotionless
noir is almost
genre.
Driven by a personal nihilism.
Yeah.
Like exactly. There's a sense of like, this is the world as it is and it's never going to get better.
Yeah.
And Pokemon is anything but that.
It's the exact
Pokemon
opposite. It's like, the whole point of living is friendship.
Yeah.
With your Pokemon
and
partner, right?
I love that contrast, but it just feels like... It feels like marketing teams don't know how to market anymore.
Yeah,
and I'm consistently.
I would say it's a bit of a catch-22 on this one, because you got to do whatever you can to get people in the theater to see your movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business. They spent $150 million on this movie.
Well spent.
Well spent for sure. But you got to make that money back,
yeah.
right? In order to make a movie of this caliber and for us to see Pokemon in this fidelity in live action costs a lot of money, which means we got to get a return on that investment. Otherwise, why are we doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So the clearest path between we've made a movie about Pokemon to we want people to spend money to see a movie about Pokemon was we've got Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. Ryan Reynolds is huge right now, in no small part due to Deadpool. We need to capitalize on that. And they did. So that's what the marketing did. So in that respect, the marketing was 100% successful and perfectly executed.
Yeah.
But as marketing can be, it's a bit disingenuous, right? Those elements, all of those scenes are in the movie, but all of those scenes are in the trailers. Yeah. So if you saw the trailers, you saw every joke there was in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
The only one that they didn't show was the lick-a-tongue joke, but they did show lick-a-tongue. And so
I would argue the climax of the movie, they also, there's a joke towards the climax that we're not in the spoiler part yet, so I'm not going to talk about, but they thankfully did not spoil that, because that would have been infuriating.
Yeah.
But brief aside on marketing, and then I will try to stay on topic. Yeah. Thinking back to like mid to late 90s, Fifth Element, say. The Fifth Element trailer was literally a giant Space 5 falling back from the camera.
Yeah.
In space. Fifth Element coming soon. Like what? Like the mystery of what drove it. Sticking with Bruce Willis for reasons. The 12 Monkeys trailer was literally an extreme close-up of Bruce Willis's screaming head, followed by a cut and 12 Monkeys coming soon.
Yeah.
For this movie, you literally could just have Pikachu talking with Ryan Reynolds' voice, and you've sold every ticket.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So it's interesting to me to watch marketing teams kind of fail upwards. I think we've had the conversation about like John Carter of Mars.
Yep.
Where that just got dramatically failed.
That's a John Carter.
Yeah.
Is
John Carpenter of Mars. Wow. It's a very different movie.
John Carter is a prime example of marketing done horribly wrong, and a movie failing as a result. Because John Carter is actually a pretty good movie.
It's fantastic.
Like I love it.
Yeah.
But objectively speaking, like I have reasons why I love it that I think are outside of the content of the film itself. But I objectively speaking, John Carter is a good movie. Drags a little bit in the middle, but it is a good movie, and it is a spectacle, and it has great performances, and it's a story worth telling, and done incredibly well, I think, by Andrew Stanton. But the marketing was awful, and the beginning of that is directly in the title of the movie, of it just being John Carter, as opposed to John Carter of Mars, which is,
much more better.
Yeah, and honestly, they should have taken the title from the second book. So the first book in that series is A Princess of Mars. That title is a little bit misleading, because A Princess of Mars makes you think that this is like a Disney princess fantasy sort of story, which it is not. Especially like the books. I mean, like that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But Gods of Mars would have been a great title for that movie, because they did take a lot of elements of Gods of Mars and put it into Princess of Mars.
They combine them.
Well, I mean, like the goal I think was to compress 6 books into 3 movies.
Yeah.
And so they borrowed a lot of elements, and in the second movie, I think we would have gone into a much different take on some things. But it's a shame, because it's never going to happen. It's not necessarily true, because there is a period of time in between A Princess of Mars and Gods of Mars that they could still play with in the new version, right? Or in the movie, they could still do it if they really wanted to, but I don't think Disney will.
No. That being said, you know what else was a Great movie with a lot of spectacle and really, really good performances. Detective Pikachu.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, like I think that the movie was successful. It made a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna get a sequel.
Thank you.
But I think the important thing, we'll talk about this when we get into the spoiler stuff as well. But I think the important thing is that the sequel doesn't have to be Detective Pikachu now.
Nope.
They've established the Pokemon world, and they've established that it's a viable thing in the marketplace. Yeah. The next installment doesn't have to be Detective Pikachu. Anything. It could be, they could just call it Pokemon the Elite Four, and it could literally be a story about or the Pokemon League, or like
you could literally
Victory
follow
Road,
the guy from the beginning.
Plateau. Yeah,
the friend from the beginning on his journey to become a Pokemon,
and
you can do anything.
Yeah, like
from this point.
Yeah, they've set up so much, and I think they've done such a great job of establishing the world that now we can get into essentially a sports movie, but with Pokemon.
Sorry, I'm imagining The Replacements, old Keanu Reeves movie, but instead of football, it's Pokemon based, and that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Get Keanu Reeves. Please, get Keanu Reeves for a Pokemon movie. I need to see that.
And that's one of the cool things about the possibility of this. I think Ryan Reynolds having been attached to it, and I think it being successful, whatever they do next, people will want to be involved. And when you, like, it's always great when you've got one success under your belt, because then you can turn around and walk over to somebody desirable and say, hey, we'd like you for part X. Yeah. Would you like to audition, or would you like to come in and talk about it? And so the idea of an actor like Keanu Reeves, who I think would be game because he's a pretty cool guy, saying to him, like, would you like to be one of the Elite Four in our Pokemon movie? And it's like, amazing. I mean, like, Keanu Reeves, I can see Dragon type Elite Four. I can see Flying type. He'd be a really cool Flying type. And obviously Dark type. He could be a great Dark type.
Keanu Reeves can do pretty much anything at this point.
He'd also be a really good Giovanni if you're going to bring in Team Rocket. What a great Giovanni he would be. I think the success of the movie is opening the door for a lot of really cool stuff. And I will say, so right before we get to sort of our final verdict on it, I'm going to go ahead and say something that I haven't really heard a lot of people say, but I think the title for Best Video Game Movie is securely held by this film. What's the next closest thing? Silent Hill? Yeah, we said it at the same time. Yeah. It's Silent Hill, which is not accessible. No. Right? Because it's a horror movie, so that instantly puts it into a very specific genre bucket, right? Of like, some people will see it, some people won't. And not only is it horror, but it's like it's in a very specific grotesque horror sort of a surrealist grotesque horror genre. So that's going to put some people off. It's not a slasher film, right? Yeah. So
Resident Evil
would come in somewhere in this top 5.
Resident Evil has nothing to do with the video games. No, it's just sort of
it's just really very loosely based on
it's Mila Jovovich action movie.
Yeah, and it's a great movie.
Yeah, it's fun.
The first Resident Evil, I think, is a fantastic movie.
The second one is weak, but they get fun.
Yeah. A lot of franchises like that, they eventually turn into something else. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, if you're putting together a top 5 video game movies, you're going to have The Wizard in there.
Oh, yeah.
As one of the greatest video game movies of all time, even though it's not specifically based on a video game.
It gave us Mario 3.
Yeah.
The first time we saw Mario 3 was in that.
And then you could make the argument for Tron. You could make the argument for Jumanji. Mm-hmm. The new Jumanji.
Yeah, Welcome to the Jungle. Yeah, is incredible.
Well, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is a great movie. Yeah. I've only seen the first half because I took Kara to it because it was like a family favorite. So it was like the cheap movie on a Saturday matinee. So we paid $2.99 for it. We went into it, and about half an hour, 45 minutes in, it was too much for her. So this was months ago. Yep. So I think now she'd be able to handle it.
absolutely game to see that movie again
Yeah.
with you. Like, I will happily do that.
Yeah,
That movie was
I really want to
incredible.
watch it again. I finished watching it, I should say. But what I saw, the first half of that movie, I was like, this movie is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And it is technically a video game movie because they're inside a video game. And they're playing by the rules of a video game.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of, it's cool in that respect. But, yeah, so I think in the pantheon of video game inspired films, Detective Pikachu is head and shoulders above everybody else. Yeah, which is ironic because that's where Pikachu sits.
Yeah.
on people. So it's appropriate that he is head and shoulders above them. Cool. So with the ThunderQuack reviewed, the thing that sort of cap it off with, there's the thumbs up, thumbs down, blah blah whatever. But for these reviews, it's really simple. Should people watch this movie?
Yes. Hands down, yes.
Yes. There's no reason not to.
The story...
Anybody will have fun.
Yeah. Story is good for what it is.
Yeah.
The mystery is fun.
Yeah.
The characters are great. The twist you will probably see coming.
Yeah.
But it's still really well told, and the reason you can see it coming is because it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's all incredibly well laid out. And just on a purely technical level, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Like, this is an incredible piece of work. It makes me feel bad for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Yeah. It doesn't stand a chance against this. It's still going to be fun.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Like, cannot wait to see it. Like, I'm really legitimately looking forward to Sonic, and I thought he looked fine.
Yeah.
In the initial trailer.
The more I looked at him and the more I watched that trailer, the more I got used to it and was like, okay, whatever, I can deal with this.
Yeah. It looks fun.
Yeah. It's a great cast.
Yeah. It's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Robotnik looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But this is so far beyond. It's comparing. This is going to be a weird comparison, but it's comparing Star Wars to the blockbusters that came before.
Yeah.
Where, like, they don't really come close. You cannot compare this movie to any other video game movie without that other video game movie falling so short.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. Go see it because it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just endlessly fun.
Yeah. Cool. And so if you have seen it, you can stick around now because we're going to get
into the spoilers.
So full warning, we are going to go into spoilers, and that means everything. Nothing is off limits, and we're going to get right into it. So let's start with the sort of elephant in the room, the one sequence in this movie that doesn't deserve to be in it. And that's the sequence with what are they? The
giant turtle things?
Yeah, the garden of giant turtles. So from a narrative perspective, it serves one singular purpose, but it doesn't need to serve this purpose.
Oh, the hurting of Pikachu?
Just to hurt Pikachu. Yeah. Which they could have done with the Greninja.
Yep.
The Greninja did it before.
Yeah.
As we learn later in the movie, they could have done it again. Yeah. There's no reason that they couldn't. Like, in fact, they should have been hurt by the Greninja because you're being chased by 4 Greninja, one of the coolest Pokemon ever.
Yeah.
You're
going to get hurt.
Yeah. So it would have made sense for them to get hurt by the Greninja. The other thing they could have done is that it could have been Psyduck that hurt them.
Yeah.
And that is a setup that doesn't have a satisfying payoff.
Yep.
Yes, they do use Psyduck to defeat the Greninja, but what would have been better is they use the Psyduck to defeat the Greninja, but it ends up hurting all of them. Yeah. And like, Pikachu should have fought the Greninja a little bit, and because he can't use his electricity, he doesn't do well. They get out of there just barely. Psyduck does his thing, but that pushes Pikachu over the edge.
Yeah.
And now they need to go get Pikachu help, and then you end up finding Mewtwo, and everything else plays out the way that it plays out. Yeah. So that is a little bit of a...
It's a 10-minute
Monday morning
that
quarterback,
is,
but
it's a very pretty sequence.
Yep.
It's a very pretty sequence.
The effects are incredible, and like as the ground is shifting beneath them, and the trees start turning sideways.
Oh my god!
It's a really cool, spectacular sequence, but it was too big for the movie itself.
The other thing with it, and hopping in on that idea of it being too big for the movie itself, you don't have something that big move, without everything around you knowing it.
Yeah.
And there was... It's the one time where they sort of broke the weight and broke the feel of the world.
Yeah, the suspension of disbelief was shattered.
Because...
Later in that... Because at the end of the sequence, as you notice, that it's not just that they're big, it's the scale of them, and that there's more than one.
Yeah.
And you're like, where are the consequences of this?
Yeah.
Like, this is world changing in a world that already has Pokemon.
Yeah.
Right?
Like this is a level where you're like, oh, Mewtwo is no longer the most powerful Pokemon.
Yeah.
Because that thing is there.
So
and just by the sheer...
So here's the big question.
Yeah.
Can you catch them in a Pokeball?
Well, you would have to, right? Like
based on Pokemon logic,
yeah.
Based on the internal logic of the universe.
Mm-hmm. You can catch the creator of the universe.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. In one of the Pokemon games, they introduced the idea. What's the Pokemon's name? I can't remember.
I don't remember. It's one of the birds.
No, it's not. It's like
I thought it was a bird.
It's like that big weird deer looking thing. Not the one from X and Y, but it is like a dinosaur deer looking thing. And I feel like it has an X somewhere in its name. But that the storyline of that Pokemon game has to do with this. Every Pokemon game has to do with a legendary Pokemon. Yeah. And it's this one Pokemon, and it is literally the creator of the universe. And you can catch this Pokemon. Yeah. So yeah, I imagine you would need a Master Ball in order to catch one of these things. But if you had a Master Ball, the logic of a Master Ball is that the Master Ball can capture any Pokemon without any problem. Yeah. So you could capture an entire mountain and put it in a Pokeball. Yeah.
There's
So it really breaks the internal logic of the Pokemon.
On a completely ridiculous note.
But
yeah. I don't know if this is going a little bit far askance, but there was like a comic way back when where Ash ends up challenging Skeletor to a Pokeduel.
Okay.
And it's like they're fighting over a thing of Pepsi Blue.
Okay.
Skeletor is like, Pepsi Blue, it's meant for Skeletor only. Skeletor only! And Ash is like, fine, I challenge you to a duel for it. And Skeletor is like, this is great. And Ash is like, okay, which Pokemon are you going to use?
Yeah.
Skeletor is like, what now?
Yeah.
So Ash explains the concept, lends him a few Pokeballs with the Pokemon in them.
Yeah.
And then Ash is like, Charizard, I choose you. And Skeletor is like, I choose you. The hell is that? Oh, that's a Magikarp. It's a...
Yeah.
And Skeletor loses a bunch of battles and then stops and goes, wait a second. Technically, a Pokemon is anything that comes out of one of those balls, right?
Yeah.
And Ash is like, yeah. Skeletor goes, great. Can I borrow a few of them? Give me like an hour. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So he comes back and Ash is like, are you ready to go? And he's like, yeah, I went and caught my own Pokemon and this is going to be great. Let's do this thing.
Yeah.
Ash is like, okay, cool. I choose you, Blastoise. And Skeletor goes, I choose you. Fantastic Four's the thing. And it just goes ridiculous from there. But yeah, technically anything that goes in a Pokeball is a Pokemon.
Sure. If you can catch it in a Pokemon, you can use it in a battle.
Yeah. And it's that level of absurdity when you're catching a mountain.
Yes.
Because like it's literally, it's not even just a mountain, it's a mountain range. Yeah. And you see multiple of these things, like 3 or 4 of them, rising up and then going back down. And even the settling of something that size
would have a consequence.
It's an extinction level event.
Sure,
for anything around it. Like,
yeah. So yeah, that part was a little bit pun intended far-fetched.
Yeah.
Farfetch'd is a Pokemon.
Yeah.
If people don't know that.
The other
A Pokemon that I would have loved to have seen in this movie, but I understand you made Psyduck a character, so you can't have the other duck Pokemon as well. Farfetch'd one of my favorite Pokemon, because he's just a duck with a leak. Why?
Because
Japan.
Pokemon.
That's why. Because Japan.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, let's kind of talk about the rest of the movie. So
I actually have one other big problem with the movie.
Yeah.
It's my only other problem with the movie. Is that plot point for plot point?
Yeah.
It is Zootopia.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
the same, like...
and that's not really a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because Zootopia is a great movie.
Yeah.
And so is this one. But it's the same basics, same actions with different intentions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you throw in Mewtwo and that changes a little bit because then the end of the movie with him merging people with Pokemon. And it's like... So there's a couple of places. The beginning of the movie, you see Mewtwo right off the bat. I mean, we already knew that going into it because there were trailers with Mewtwo. Mm-hmm. But even if you didn't see those trailers, they ruin it right at the beginning of the movie. Because the second you introduce Mewtwo can do...
whatever it wants.
His powers are psychic powers. So anything to do with the mind. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, now I know why Pikachu talks.
Yeah.
Right? And then you learn, we already knew from the trailers, but in the movie you learn, his dad is dead. His partner Pokemon survived. For some reason, Tim is the only one who can understand Pikachu.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, Tim can understand Pikachu because Pikachu is his dad.
Yeah.
Obviously. Right from the outset, right?
So, funny story on that is, I didn't initially catch that.
Okay.
Because he inhales the gas right away.
They do set up a red herring, which I think was really smart.
And I totally fell into the red herring. Bree turns to me in the theater as they're showing flashbacks.
Yeah.
It just goes, it's Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
With every single back turn.
Yeah, so that was the next part is we see this hologram of the car flipping and Mewtwo being responsible. Mm-hmm. I'm using quote fingers for that. Mm-hmm. And we see Tim's dad on the ground crawling out of the car, but we never get to see his face. And it was at that point I went the exact same thing. I was like, well, then it's obviously Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. Who
else would it be? Mm-hmm. And the only other misdirect that they put in the movie is one that I don't think was entirely intentional, because I think they just cast the movie as they cast the movie. And Tim was cast because he was right for the role. But because he's mixed ethnicity, and they established it earlier in the movie when you see the pictures of his mom's African American, and then he's African American with lighter skin. But that doesn't necessarily mean, that's not the full equation. You can't go ahead and make an assumption that his father isn't also African American, right? So there's a little bit of a misdirect there to then find out later in the movie. The other part of it is that he's a little bit old to be Ryan Reynolds' son. Not technically, but as we know Ryan Reynolds, he's a little bit old.
I mean, they age up Ryan Reynolds.
They do age him up a little bit, yeah. I think they should have given him a pair of glasses. I think that probably would have done the trick. But anyways, so there's a couple of things in there where you're like, well, it can't be Ryan Reynolds. It's going to be somebody else. Yeah. But then you're like, then the Mewtwo stuff happens in the middle where you kind of get a little bit of the Mewtwo can do all these different things. And there's something that the doctor says. I can't remember off the top of my head, but she says something. She says something that totally tipped me off to well, there it is, right? Mm-hmm. And then as you get towards the end of the movie, it's very obvious that basically once Pikachu discovers that they've been misled, and then you find out, you sort of start putting it together right before the reveal of Ditto and all that.
Oh, the Ditto is brilliant.
That's the one place where they totally got me, and they set it up, and they gave us a hint.
Beautiful. Nobody likes your Pokemon.
Yeah, and
awesome.
when we first see that character in human form, she's got the pink goo gloves, the pink latex gloves, and that was a dead giveaway in retrospect to the fact that she was a Ditto and the sunglasses and everything. But it's like, it's in the world of Pokemon. You look at her and you're like, well, she's just some sort of Team Rocket style henchman, right? She's got the sunglasses on at night, whatever. It's a heightened world of silliness with, animals that breathe fire. So you kind of dismiss
jerk
it.
son with the sunglasses on because he's a jerk.
But like all good film noir detective stories, when you look back at all of the pieces laid out, the story, like the picture becomes clear.
It's perfect.
Right? Yeah. So that was one of those places where like they nailed it 100%. What a great reveal. And then on top of it, the joke, like the gag of the eyeballs. It's just like, it's so good. It's creepy. It's uncomfortable. But it's so perfect. And then the stuff with, everybody getting merged into their Pokemon or whatever. But then thankfully Mewtwo being able to undo what they did. Should say they. One of the things that's interesting about Mewtwo is that the voice for Mewtwo is a male voice and a female voice layered over each other. Which
was really cool to hear.
I guess the one other thing that I think that we should talk about in the spoilers, and then I think we can wrap it up, is the part in the middle with the Charizard. That whole sequence with the underground fight club. We got to see so many Pokemon there. We got to see, one of the things that I love the most about this movie is that it recognized that this isn't a movie just for the adults in the audience. If it was, all the Pokemon would have been Gen 1 Pokemon, maybe a couple of Gen 2 Pokemon just for giggles. But it would have been so focused on Gen 1 Pokemon. It's not. There are Pokemon from every gen. It's very Gen 1 heavy because those are the iconic Pokemon like Charmander, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Pikachu, obviously, Charizard, Magikarp, Gyarados, right? Psyduck, like the Ditto. Like there's a lot of really iconic Pokemon in Gen 1 because that's the phenomenon. That's where it starts. So, and the other part of that I think is that the cartoon established a lot of roles for the Gen 1 Pokemon. So when we see the police, and we spend a lot of time with the police in the department and with them showing up to different things. So we see a lot of Growlithe and we see a lot of Arcanine, which made me so happy. But it's one of those things where it's like it was a context thing. And in a future Pokemon story, we might not see as many Growlithe and Arcanine because if we're not doing another Detective Pikachu, but we're doing a Pokemon movie that's more about the Pokemon League, we'll see a variety of Pokemon in that, right? But the context of this movie definitely created this environment where we got to see a few different type of Pokemon repeatedly because of their role, right? Within society. So I thought that was really cool. But then in the battle, Pikachu fighting Charizard, that Charizard was unbelievable, steals the show. When Tim runs in, this is why it's a perfect Pokemon movie and why it's the best video game movie. It uses the rules of the video game, but it also takes into account the animated series that is based off of the video game. And Tim runs in, and in order to stop the Charizard from attacking Pikachu, he starts stomping on its tail, which to the average moviegoer that doesn't know a lot about Pokemon hasn't been a part of the Pokemon experience for
doesn't mean anything.
It's like, well, he's just kicking it in the tail and distracting it. No, he's not. He is actually going for the weak spot, and he could kill it. If he puts that fire out. So the thing with the Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, if the flame on their tail goes out, they die. And when they die, the flame on their tail goes out.
It goes both ways. It was that one heartbreaking episode with the trainer who was mistreating the
Charmander. And Ash rescues it. And in the rain, he protects its tail and gets it. I mean, it was such a great episode of Pokemon. So defining for that series. So that little detail, and it's one of those blink and you miss it moments, but it is one of those moments where you're like, they get it. The writers get it, the director gets it, everybody involved with this movie gets Pokemon, and that's the element that is missing in so many video game movies.
Not just video game movies.
Movies based
television
on,
shows, media in general. People that get to write like comic book characters and don't understand the character they're writing, but it's a paycheck. And maybe they wrote another character really well, but you don't write everybody well. Like, you just can't. There's certain stories that people can tell and certain stories that they can't. And I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But everybody involved in this.
Yeah, they got it.
Clearly knew
they
what
understood
they were
what
doing.
Pokemon
Yeah.
is. So I loved that whole sequence. And to cap off an incredible... It would have been great the way it was, right? The R gets released, all the Pokemon go berserk, and just pandemonium. And then there's only 2 Pokemon left standing, and Pikachu goes, you know what? I can't fight this Charizard because my powers aren't working, but I have a plan. And he grabs the Magikarp, and he goes, it'll evolve into a Gyarados. Like he says it, and he tosses it, and it does nothing. It does splash. It uses splash. It's ineffective.
Which does nothing.
Yeah. And it's so funny because this is another and these are 2 references to the anime back to back, where he goes, it just needs a little kick. He kicks the Magikarp and nothing happens. And that's a reference to an episode of Pokemon where James kicks of Jesse and James Team Rocket kicks a Magikarp as like whatever, it's just a Magikarp, and it evolves into a Gyarados, and then Team Rocket is blasting off again, right? And so you get that reference in the like, it just needs a little kick to get it started or whatever, and he kicks it and nothing happens. But then it evolves into Gyarados, and it's one of those things where it's like, if they did it for the joke and he kicks it and nothing happens, and then they get crispy fried or whatever, and then the police show up and we move on, totally worth it. Great joke. Even better because in that moment you're going like, really hope I get to see Gyarados. Yeah. And then we do. And Gyarados is glorious. So cool. And this is one of those things. I had a bad experience in the movie theater. And I own that really colored my experience with the movie itself. But then with time, I saw it on Saturday and it's now Thursday. And with time and perspective, I'm going like, no, there's so much in this movie that I loved. I love this movie. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things in media right now. I guess this is kind of the closing thought to the review. There's a lot of stuff in media right now that people are kind of losing their minds over. Yeah. Game of Thrones is happening right now.
I was about to say.
And it's like the series finale is this Sunday, and no one's going to be happy. No. I had problems with the last episode. This isn't a Game of Thrones spoiler cast, so we won't get into it, but...
I'll do one of those with you if you want.
Yeah. I had issues with the way that they handled stuff, but at the same time, I understand where they were going. I think execution was lacking, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a compelling hour and 20... what was it? Hour and however many... Yeah, like whatever. Super long
even
episode of television.
I only had one problem.
Yeah.
But one character arc problem, and it's not the one that everybody seems to think it should be.
Yeah, so I think it's really important for people to divorce the experience from the storytelling. Yes. And that cuts both ways. It's both in the sense of like, they didn't do what I wanted them to do, therefore The Last Jedi is the worst movie ever. It also is, I love Thing X so much that I'm willing to overlook the inherent flaws that it has.
It's weird. So Bree and I were on vacation this past week, and we bumped into a guy up there who was like, "Oh, well, I subscribe to logic, and according to logic, X equals X all the time." Yeah. X doesn't equal X all the time. No. X, it's literally an integer.
X doesn't always equal X in reality, much less in storytelling.
Oh, never in storytelling. Yeah. Because you're layering. You're not dealing with an XY axis or even an XYZ axis. You're dealing with a multitude of different perspectives, and everybody is bringing their own stuff into that story and how they're going to perceive that story.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to just sit back and take the story for what it is. Certainly look into the subtext. Definitely look into the mythology. Love the thing. But if you cannot laugh at a thing, you've probably lost sight of what makes it matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's not... Even if something like... Even if we walk away unhappy, even if this last season of Game of Thrones is rushed, and it is, the pacing is way the hell off.
Yeah.
It's still wrapping up 7 of the most incredible seasons of television that have ever existed, and those will always be there.
Yeah.
It doesn't destroy anything. It doesn't ruin anything. This is the ending that we're able to tell right now. And maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years down the line, we'll get Game of Thrones Brotherhood. And, the books will be out and they'll be able to, actually do whatever the story is. But... Solid
Full Metal Alchemist reference.
Thank you. But this is what we've got right now.
Yeah.
And it's great.
There are things in that specific example that it's like, and this is my whole point, just like Detective Pikachu. Yeah, do I have problems with the movie? Of course I do. It's a movie. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be perfect. There are very few, I call them perfect 10 movies.
Oh, God.
It's like Back to the Future is a perfect 10 movie. Yeah. The first Back to the Future, right? Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3, diminishing returns.
Yeah.
The further you get into that series, the more problems you have, right? Mm-hmm. They're still great movies. But the original Back to the Future, on its own, divorced from everything else, perfect 10 movie. Yeah. Ghostbusters, perfect 10 movie. Shawshank Redemption, perfect 10 movie. Forrest Gump, perfect 10 movie, right? There's a handful of movies throughout time that are perfect 10s. Yeah. Most movies don't even get close to achieving that.
No.
Most movies are... most great movies, most fantastic movies are 9s.
Yeah.
Right? I would say that Detective Pikachu is a solid 7.
Yeah.
It's right there in the good... verging on great.
Yeah.
And it's verging on greatness because of what it accomplishes with the source material.
The other thing is that people... I used to belong to a bunch of writers' guilds and whatever, and it was always, oh, well, you write genre.
Yeah.
Listen, bitch. Genre is what people remember.
Yeah.
I can tell you, Dracula and Carmilla and Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, whatever. I can't tell you what any of the high art books that were coming out at the time were because nobody cares.
Yeah.
None of them have anything to do with anything.
We can reference War and Peace because it's a big book. We can reference A Tale of Two Cities and Dickens and stuff like that because historically they're important for certain reasons. For the way that storytelling evolved. But they are not in and of themselves
good.
They're not infinite in the way that genre storytelling tends to be, where you're right, Dracula, Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Those are two, how many incarnations of those characters have we seen?
The Count of Monte Cristo, the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
Those characters will endure.
Heads up. The Bible.
Yeah.
Which is controversial to say, I know, for a lot of people.
No,
but one of the reasons why the Bible persists is because of the level of mythic storytelling.
Yep.
It's the same reason why Greek myth, which was the religion of that time, persists. And it's the reason why a lot of great religious stories persist. It's because they are mythic and legendary.
Stories
and that's genre.
Give us ways to be.
Yeah.
Stories give us ways to be. They give us new ways to experience the world, characters to live up to and define ourselves by. And in the past, the stories would become religion. They would become faith. People would spread them on, add their own tales, whatever. With being able to write them down, you would be able to share the same story and thereby spread your narrative wherever. But now we're dealing with... I don't know if we've talked about this, but I've definitely talked about it with several other people. But the primary export of America is culture.
Yeah.
It's what they spread is culture.
Yeah.
It's their movies, it's their television, it's more effective than any army that they could ever put together is KFC.
Yeah.
It's the McDonald's pipe dream of I want a Happy Meal and then I want to go watch X-Men or whatever.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that allow us to share an experience together, and they bind us.
Yeah.
While at the same time inspiring better aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
I pulled X-Men out of my ass and then like immediately regretted it. And then now I'm like, oh, no, wait. Because you can take a look at a Magneto and be like, well, that's a tragic character.
Yeah.
And I can identify with the tragedy and the pain that he's going through. And maybe because I've seen that play out, I don't have to go there.
Yeah.
There's feeling in that you do not get in high art.
Yeah.
Because high art is interesting from a technical perspective. But Detective Pikachu, with those moments where like you tear up because you legitimately feel a connection with a little electric mouse.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, so this will be the cap on it, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Okay.
When we say like what persists and that sort of thing, and the idea of like high art from a technical perspective, wow, what an accomplishment. Wow, that was amazing. And some movies go to that place and it's worthwhile and it deserves to exist as well. But when we want to talk about influence and what you're talking about and something that has a meaningful impact, genre is always going to trump the high art or straight drama or like any of those sorts of things, and when we can lay, the great thing about genre is that genre is a really great base, and then you layer on other things to it. So you can have a genre story and then you can layer on drama and you end up with Blade Runner, or you can layer on comedy and you end up with Guardians of the Galaxy. They're both sci-fi, but they are two very different things
apart,
and
literally
Blade Runner makes an impact, certainly from a technical perspective, but Guardians of the Galaxy is more accessible and has a broader impact as a result.
Yeah.
And the best example I can give of that is, let's think about all of the technical high art that was coming out of the Renaissance and Elizabethan times, and then let's talk about Shakespeare, which now we consider to be high art and classic, but
trash.
At the time, it was pure garbage. Yeah. Is a Saturday night or their equivalent of a Saturday night. They didn't really have weekends. That's a very American 1950s, a little bit, but like the shared idea of like everybody works Monday to Friday and then takes a couple days off.
But you would get Sunday.
Sure, okay, you get Sunday for a holiday. Yeah, but it's our night to go out. It's our night to have fun. What are the two things we have to choose from? Well, we can go watch a bear fight two dogs, or we can check out that Shakespeare thing. That's what it was up against. Yeah. Right? Like, that's the world that they were living in at that time. It wasn't like nowadays where it's like, oh, there's an excellent production of Hamlet going on. And it's like, well, I would go, but I have tickets to the opera and the symphony is next week, and like, which is how people think of Shakespeare now. But Shakespeare is
garbage.
Shakespeare was the MCU of the time.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no other. That is the best description of Shakespeare possible.
And in my opinion, when I watch the MCU, Shakespeare remains the Shakespeare of our time as well, because so much of the storytelling in the MCU is Shakespearean storytelling.
Well, the other
Star
thing was
Wars
Shakespeare would just steal stuff left, right, and center and just combine it.
Yeah.
And make it into something new that was equally trashy.
And all of his great stuff, the best stuff, almost all of his work is genre.
Yeah.
Hamlet is genre.
Yeah.
There are ghosts. There's magic. There's all sorts of cool stuff.
There's witches running around.
There's witches. Midsummer Night's Dream. Like, come on. Like,
Romeo and Juliet? Oh, come on! It's a gang war.
Yeah,
It's a gang
well,
war.
and it's romance, and romance is and it's trashy romance, not dramatic romance, but trashy romance.
It really is trashy. Like people that are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I want to love like Romeo and Juliet." It's like, have you read the play?
Yeah. So
Stand it.
So I just want to take a self-congratulatory moment to say that we are probably the only review of Detective Pikachu on the internet to successfully, I think very successfully, compare Detective Pikachu to Shakespeare. And I think that with that, we've done everything we came here to do tonight.
Really.
So thank you for listening.
Better cap.
I can't believe we got there. I knew it would go somewhere. I didn't think it was going to go there, but I'm really glad that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening. Of course, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Head over to podcast services and check out the ThunderQuack podcast.
If you're interested, you can click a bell down near the bottom of the thing.
Oh yeah,
it will
get
notify
notifications. You. Yeah. And we're going to try and put out more regular content like this on YouTube, so that's definitely worthwhile. And of course, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/ThunderQuack. And we've got a merch store.thunderquack.com, where you can pick up all sorts of different merchandise based on our different podcast properties, like Quiver the Green Arrow podcast, the Rebel Cells, the Star Wars animation podcast, stuff like that. You can check me out on both of those podcasts that I just mentioned, as well as the ThunderQuack podcast. Aaron, where can people find you on the internet?
AaronGolden.ca is my website. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm consistently doing. And then I'm last one on Twitter and Porcupine Monkey on Instagram.
Cool. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ArcWolf. You can follow the ThunderQuack Podcast Network at ThunderQuackNet on Twitter and at ThunderQuack Podcast on Instagram. And head to thunderquack.com to check out all the great podcasts in our network. Thank you for joining us on the adventure that was ThunderQuack reviewed Detective Pikachu. Thank you, Aaron, for being with me.
I'm delighted to be here.
And we'll catch you guys on the next one.